Welcome to the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions, now in its 26th season. Our panel features a longtime Penn State media and NitWits tag team. Neil Rudell of the Altoona Mirror and Mark Brennan of Lions 24/7 with Fight on State. The NitWits are hosted by WTAJ's Ryan Riskey. And each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By DeLeo Games, serving the community since 1945. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed and Solaney Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntingdon. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By RE/MAX Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage, no matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store. By Brent Kogan Electrical Services, lighting the way for you. By NovaCare, Altoona and State College, the power of physical therapy. By Fullington Tours, offering round-trip transportation to and from Beaver Stadium from locations in State College and Altoona. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs, candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. By Harry's Construction, if you can dream it, we can create it. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
Penn State closes out the regular season with a 42-0 beatdown of Michigan State to finish 10-2, which should solidify their chances of making it to a New Year's Six bowl game. We break down the win and what lies ahead for the Nittany Lions. Nittany Nation Overtime is next.
Hey, what I'm doing, hey, getting right to it. The money is talking, I'm flowing, it's coming in just how I do it. Yeah, you know what it is. Hey, we doing it big. Look up, there's no limit, no, we cannot settle for this. Yeah, can't stop. Stop. It's been on live. You don't believe it, just watch.
Welcome into Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm Ryan Riskey. I'm joined by Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and former Penn State defensive coordinator Tom Bradley. And guys, third shutout win of the season for Penn State, and the third time they've held their opponent under 100 yards of offense. Tom, I'm going to start with you. What did you like from the defense?
Well, I'm going to talk about this because it's a team game. And I say this all the time. You know who the best player on Penn State's team is? The team. So every time tries to break it down, offense, defense, kicking. Well, the offense has been doing a great job controlling the ball. No picks, making long fields. The kicking game's been great, solid. Punt's been good, everything. So that helps the defense. So you all play together. I get tired sometimes of hearing offense, defense, kicking, trying to break it down individually because it's a team game. And I'll say it again, the best player in the team is the team.
Well, you know, the all-star teams will be coming out this week, and I think it's difficult to pick out Penn State's, say, MVPs. On both sides of the ball in a way. We'll see what happens with the All-Stars. It hasn't necessarily been overly friendly to Penn State in past years. I mean, I think Adisa Isaacs had a great year as a defensive end, boosted his stock, but they have several, on the other side, Chop, and they've done a great job on defense.
Yeah, going back to what Tom said, I mean, I think when this team's been at its best, it's played complementary football. I mean, I know that's coach speak, but the offense has set up the defense or vice versa. And then for the second half of the season, after that bye week, the special teams really came together. And we saw them playing well again as the season wound down. So I just think that with any good team, and that was the one thing that I think was disappointing in the two games that they lost, is I don't think we saw that complementary football. The key is, do you build on it? With respect to who their award winners on defense are going to be, you know what? They've done a really nice job all year of guys not worrying about that whatsoever. If you look, they don't have a tackler in the top 25 in the Big Ten, and nobody cares because early in the year they were blowing people out. Guys only had to play a half. but they know that when it matters most, coaches, guys who coached in the NFL, guys who coached in college, they look at tape and they know how good players are, and that's ultimately what they're going to be defined by.
Yeah, I bring it up because it's coming out in the next couple of days.
You're not going to see a ton of guys.
Right.
Well, let me say this, though. They have been playing great defense. Shutouts are hard to come by. Like, I'm not minimizing those shutouts because they are very hard to come by in college football especially, okay? So, but I want to emphasize, too, that there's so much more that goes into, because everybody, as you said, complementary football with each other. They're not separate. They're all in this together, and that's why I always like to say the best player in the team is the team.
This is probably one of the more complete games that they have played this year because, you know, the passing game was really clicking. They're taking shots downfield. They finally unlocked the running backs, both Katron and Nick Singleton, at over 100 yards. It was just a good complementary game, as you guys said.
Yeah, you know, the word that you're hearing now, a little bit more now that they've made a coordinator change, is simplicity. They've kind of scaled back. Maybe they had too much, in the Ohio State game in their repertoire or whatever they thought was their repertoire. And Aller was saying it after the game. They've tried to play fast and they've tried to play more simple. You know, he really looked relaxed. And, you know, hey, they finally got really their two backs really featured, 18 touches each.
Yeah, I mean, toward the end of the Rutgers game, they really relied heavily on the run. They almost did what Michigan did, we said this last week, did against Penn State, where it's like, you know what? We know this offense that they're facing isn't going to be that good. Just run the ball, and things are going to take care of itself. And I love that they went back to that. And now, it wasn't exclusively the run, but in the second half, when they put that thing away, they just ran, and you could see the legs go from those Michigan State players. Now, they struggled all year against good offenses, but the fact that they were able to get that running game going in these last couple games, I think, is big heading into a bowl.
And I think kind of with the running game, the one thing is, you know, this is what we thought we were going to get multiple times throughout the year. Like, 3 different times Penn State has played the team who had the worst rushing defense in the Big Ten, and then they struggled to run the ball.
Well, here's the thing that goes into this. Great point you brought up. The way they're controlling the game, you know, they're controlling what they're doing. They're running, how they're handling the ball. They're not turning it over. They're playing such good complementary football with each other. And so, as I said before, those defensive shutouts, they are hard to come by. So you got to give credit where credit's due. But I don't want to just overpass, hey, all the other guys are what they're doing to make it happen there.
Yeah, and then, you know, obviously this culminated in another 10-win season. We have to take a break right now, but when we come back, we'll discuss, was the 10 wins a disappointment or more of a missed opportunity?
The NitWits are being brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By DeLeo Games, serving the community since 1945. By Reed and Selene Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. And by McAlear's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back into Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm Ryan Risky, joined by Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and Tom Bradley. And guys, second consecutive year with a 10-win regular season. Sometimes, though, I mean, it feels kind of bad saying, you know, you were probably hoping for a little more this year.
Oh, yeah, sure. I think we thought that they had a real good chance to split with Ohio State and Michigan. James has done a really good job beating the teams they're supposed to beat. And, you know, yesterday on the way back, it's kind of different, too, to cover a game on a Friday and just the whole routine. But, boy, the national Ohio State fan base and the national radio, boy, Ryan Day is really under a lot of pressure because he hasn't been able to beat Michigan. And there's a parallel there at Penn State. You know, people are happy overall with the job James has done, but they haven't quite gotten over that hump.
Well, yeah, I don't think you could look past the fact that this is the last year of divisional play, and it was your opportunity to get over that proverbial hump and prove that you're right there. Now, I think competitive-wise, they've been there, but if the W's don't show up, I mean, it's a different thing. And now, you know, Tom was talking about it before the show, now you're going into a whole different realm of Big Ten, where getting to 10 wins is going to be a real challenge. And if you're able to do it, you're going to be in the playoff, but it's going to be a whole different conference next year. But I think being unable to do it in the last year of divisional play, as unfair as these divisions have been, as unbalanced as they've been, it would have been nice to see them get there 1 year.
Well, the reason I know a little bit about those teams out there because I coached against them for 3 years. It's going to be very interesting.
You coached one of them too, yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be very interesting. Especially the travel is going to become interesting too, because everybody forgets it's not just the travel. Because these guys have schoolwork too. They got to go to classes. There's a lot of other things going on, just besides football. So to me, it's going to be very interesting. And when you look at the schedule next year, yeah,
10 wins will be more of an achievement next year than it is right now. And, that's the one of the things that has been a little frustrating because, the comments are being made, hey, there's a lot of people that would take 10 wins in a row a couple years. But Penn State isn't a lot of people. Penn State is, aspiring to be an elite level program. And I think that's, and probably the way they lost these couple games has left people just a little frustrated.
Well, listen, nobody cares about our expectations. Right. What about their expectations? Yeah. They're the ones who want to compete for an when you talk to the coaches and players, they're the ones who want to compete at that level. So yeah, whatever we think they should be, I mean, they're not living up to where they wanted to be as good as it was. And they would be the first people to admit that. But by the same token, you're always going to get, well, a lot of people would take 10. Well, yeah, a lot of people would take 10, but then you're sitting there the last weekend of November and not really having a chance to be in that big mix that everybody's so happy about.
But believe me, that team, they thought they could win all 12 games, and
sure.
They could have, and that's the attitude you got to have because they have the talent. It's not like people say, we're happy to get to 10. They weren't happy because they know they have the talent to get to 12.
I'm curious what they'll learn coming out of this year. And again, I draw back to yesterday's Michigan-Ohio State game. And some of the criticism, Ryan Day faced a 4th and 1 fairly early in the game, on the flip side of the field and punted it. There was, the halftime that was kind of, he attempted a long field goal. And I don't think Penn State has coached as aggressively against Ohio State and Michigan as it has the rest of the schedule. And I hope that changes next year.
And obviously, going back, 10 wins, it is an accomplishment, except that, I think coming off the way last year ended, 10 wins, Rose Bowl victory, you've got all this talent coming in. I think everyone thought this was the year that they were going to finally, make that next jump.
Well, I think a lot of people actually I think they were targeting next year because this was Aller's first year as a starter. Yeah, it was a lot of optimism, and I'm not sure people felt Ohio State was as good as it's been in the past, regardless of what people felt. I'm not sure Ohio State was as good as it's been in the past. So I think next year with the running backs and some of the players you have coming back, including your quarterback, I think next year was also a year that they've been looking targeting.
I think when a lot of us were doing predictions, we were guessing they were going to beat one or the other of Ohio State and Michigan. And if they played really well, they would get both of them. It turns out they get neither. And I think maybe that's what you're talking about, Neil. I think a lot of us may have been looking at that. Okay, that's the stepping stone to next year. And now what's the stepping stone? Now, I mean, do you just think you're going to be – and I guess the difference would be that next year getting into the playoff, in one sense, will be easier in that more teams are involved. In another sense, it'll be more difficult in that the Big Ten is going to be that much tougher.
You might not be able to be 9-3.
Yeah.
Right, as you said, next year's schedule is a gauntlet. Really tough 5-game stretch in the middle of the year. And right now we have to take another break, but when we come back, we'll discuss, what Penn State needs to do in the offseason before the bowl game.
The NitWits are being brought to you by Monarch Cleaners for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By RE/MAX Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry. The answer is always Dorman's. And by Star Beverage. No matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back into Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm Ryan Risky with Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and Tom Bradley. Guys, kind of something that happened after the game is during the post-game press conferences. Drew Aller and Nick Singleton both announced that they will be returning next year. They're not going to be hitting the transfer portal.
Yeah, I think a good sign for Penn State, obviously. Two guys, Yeah, especially in Aller. I mean, I think the way he kind of handled himself this year through good times and through bad times just really became the face of the program. And then for a guy like Nick Singleton, listen, nothing came easy for him this year. I'm not sure exactly what the problem was, Tom. Maybe you have a better idea because you're an actual coach. But things did not click the way you hoped. And for him not to just say, you know what, I'm going somewhere else. I just think it's a good sign about what the program's all about, that they're not just going to go chase other opportunities. When you look around the NCAA and you see so many people where a little bit of adversity and they're headed somewhere else.
I'll tell you, it's great you brought that up because I think that's what the transfer portal's done, obviously. But you know what? We're sitting there saying, I could go other. Where are you going to go that's better than Penn State? Where is better than Penn State? Okay, you go and you play in front of 112,000 people, okay? The program's awesome. Where are you going that's better? You know what I mean? So that's my point. And the other thing is for those two guys, to me, I was like, well, why are you announcing you're coming back? This is your team. Didn't you pick? This is your team.
But it's the era we're in. And
yeah, but
I agree with you, like where you're going to go other than Penn State. But you know, sometimes younger kids or young adults, they don't think that way. They have their parents in their ears. They have their
agents,
managers in their ear, their agents in their ear.
You know,
and I just think it shows maturity on their part.
I agree with that. And these questions usually be deferred to the bowl game, but it was more timely because Yurcich hadn't really spoken. Aller hadn't spoken since Yurcich was fired, and Singleton was asked. I mean, these guys are making money and they have endorsements and on NIL. So I think it was good that they were able to clear the air right away.
Right, and another thing too with that is Mike Yurcich was heavily involved with the recruitment of Drew Aller, and you didn't know how tied he was to Yurcich, if he'd want to follow him or what he was going to do.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Aller said, hey, listen, basically said James Franklin's my guy. He's meant a lot to me, just not as a player, but in my life. He wasn't being negative toward Yurcich, who he really cares about. This was the guy who recruited him. But again, this was a guy who committed to Penn State before he was a 5-star. Penn State was one of his first offers, and he committed not just to an offensive coordinator, but to a head coach and to a university. And I think the more players do that, the better it's going to be for them and their families.
Well, you talk about offensive coordinator, and hopefully that'll be resolved reasonably soon. James said that they're going to spend the next week meeting with every player on the team just to, keep that open. I think that's one of his strengths.
Let's just hope it's not resolved by the time this airs.
That would be just our luck for that. That'd be just our luck to happen.
I don't want to have to come back
again.
Yeah,
some of those meetings are fun when you meet with the players after the season because every once in a while, then the head coach, I'd like you in this meeting with me today. Because there are some great things that are said.
I'm sure.
I mean, really, there are very classic things that are said in those meetings. I can't even talk about it on this show because there were sometimes I couldn't help it. I just wanted to laugh sometimes because what they came up with was awesome.
That's probably a separate book.
Yes, it is. It's a whole different
One player that I thought emerged a little bit more down the stretch was Amari Evans. He was a guy that people had high hopes for earlier in the season. I was glad to see them start to go to him.
Yeah, I also liked the play of the offensive line. Again, at the end of that Rutgers game, I thought they were really good in pass protection for most of the year, but then to be able to just exert their will and get that run game going, that's more than just the running backs. That's the O-line. And I think, you look around, you see this Ohio State-Michigan game every year, and which team is winning? The one who's controlling things with the offensive line. So I think to take that next step, that's where you need to be.
Right, and going back to Amari Evans, he's made 2 big plays in back-to-back weeks, and you said we thought there was going to be high hopes for him because he had such a good outing in the blue-white game, and then just no one really emerges in that third wide receiver spot throughout training camp.
Well, I think James Franklin said they were giving more kids opportunities. They were playing up to their strengths. And I read that to say that under the previous OC, they were looking for guys to do too much. And I think it goes back to simplifying things. And I think when you look at Evans, he's a speed guy, he's a great athlete, and maybe they were just playing to that. But I think just simply giving him the opportunities was important because if you look at it, those last couple games, Keandre Lambert-Smith did not do what he had been doing, so you needed somebody to step up.
Evans may be your number 1 next year.
Right, and I guess, that kind of heads into the offseason. The transfer portal window is going to be opening up. I think everyone would probably agree wide receiver is probably one of their biggest needs.
Yeah, I mean, every year it seems to be one of their biggest needs, doesn't it? And, defensive end's always going to be one of your biggest needs. But for them to go out and, listen, I mean, I don't think you have to look too long at that wide receiver core and realize that outside of Keandre Lambert-Smith until the last couple games, nobody stepped up week in and week out. And if you can find somebody like that, great. And if they know they're going to have a quarterback like Drew Aller, great. But I do think that's an area where they really need some help.
Yeah, I mean, and the lack of a number one guy you can tell, what Jahan Dotson, a guy like that meant, just to be able to chuck it down the field when you need to for someone to go up and make a play. I don't think you really felt like they had that this year. I mean, obviously Amari Evans came up big in this game with that 60-yard catch down to the 1.
But when you have that wide receiver, that guy, they have to pay attention to him. You know what that does for your run game? Mm-hmm. It helps your run game because they have to pay so much attention to him. Now they can't do all this fancy stuff because you got the run game, and they want to get all these people in the box. But now you get this guy sitting out there and like, whoa, he needs help.
It's almost like there's a team in the Big Ten who had a guy like that who was able to mask some things for certain people.
That's where I was going with it.
All right, and I guess kind of one of the last things to touch up on it, obviously it's bowl season. Looks like Penn State is going to get a New Year's Six bowl for the second consecutive year. Where would you guys like to see them go?
I'd like to see him play the most marquee opponent available.
I agree.
I don't have a problem with the Peach if you're going to play a good team. The Fiesta's been good to Penn State for sure. The Cotton Bowl's a good trip. I just would like, hey, they played Memphis a couple years in the Cotton Bowl. They took their turn with the group of 5. I'd like to see them avoid Tulane if possible.
And I think another thing, though, a marquee opponent might also maybe have players who have thoughts about playing or not playing and enter for the NFL draft. It's like if they're playing in Alabama, when they were being recruited, Alabama was what Georgia is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw it a couple of years ago with the Outback Bowl when way more guys kind of, opted out of that bowl game than they did last year in the Rose Bowl. Completely get if people do opt out. I mean, especially a guy like Olu, if you're talking about a potential top 5 pick. But let's see how that plays out. We don't know if some of these guys may have NIL deals that include them being at least part of the team through the bowl game. So it is going to be fun to watch these next couple of weeks. It used to be, Tom, when, way back in the day, the season was over, you guys would just relax.
He always goes way
You guys
back.
would just relax for like 3 weeks and not do anything. I'm kidding.
You were hatching the deal before the pick game.
You bring up a point. I can tell you, has been a player and a coach. When they announce who that team is, you can just watch the practices. If you're playing somebody, there's a little different step out of practice. There's a different beat. There's a different momentum. There's a different talk in the locker room. When they get an opponent, they're like, okay, this is going to be a good one. You can just sense it.
Well, we'll find out in a couple of weeks who Penn State's opponent is and where they will be playing. We have to take another break. When we come back, we will crown our Nitwit of the Week and find out who won this year.
Don't miss a minute of Nittany Nation Overtime, now also on Apple and Spotify.
The Nitwits are being brought to you by Brent Kogan Electrical Services, lighting the way for you. By Fullington Tours, offering round-trip transportation to and from Beaver Stadium from locations in State College and Altoona. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs. Candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
All right, Nitwit of the Week. Oh, look at that. I've taken the lead over Mark now.
You haven't won yet, though. There's one more game to go.
Right.
I think there's a bowl, right? Are they going to be in a
preliminary clinch you just announced?
Yeah, getting a little bit ahead of yourself.
I never announced myself as the winner for the year. I just said we might be getting close to figuring
You
out.
said
who
we
it is.
have a winner.
Well, Brennan dug his own fate here.
I did.
Yeah, it's been winning 4 of the first 5. And
Yeah.
yeah, you've been on a real cold streak.
That's right. I may get fired, right? get rid of me.
Hey, one of the great things this year was Tom Bradley being an honorary captain at Penn State. I mean, other than Spider, I don't know that there was another highlight. But no, that was great to see you come back and be part of the program.
Yeah, it was the first time back in 12 years. It was awesome. I was just worried about one thing. Please, we got to win the coin toss. That's all I care about. And we did. So we did win the coin toss, but that was a great honor, and I'm very thankful for that opportunity to go back. It brought back just a flood of memories and walking out there and all the things you think about, from having the opportunity to play with my brothers to all the teammates to everybody over the years, and it was a special moment.
One of a lot of people we have a ton of respect for. One of the great things Tom did at bowl games, Penn State would have to open up practices, which they never did. And when it opened up, he would go to his watch and say to the reporters, okay, I'm giving you 4 minutes to knowing when the head coach, Joe, was going to all scream and show us all the way off the field. But a great example of the great relationship that we've had with you when you were a coach and now that you're doing other things. So
now you have me on your
a
show.
Friend. Yeah,
who would have thought? Holy
Can
smokes, I've come a long way.
Can we announce tonight that you've accepted the A&M job? We want to hold that.
Don't even start that back, because now my phone will start blowing up.
Tommy,
they will know if you're messing around.
You've been a friend of the media and a friend of Penn State people. We appreciate you making the trip. You're doing some Penn State media and Steeler opportunities. So great to see you still involved with the game.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been a great opportunity. We have that show. Jay and I do that show, and that's been just a great time to have the guests we've been able to have on, and the way we get it going, and it's been a lot of fun. It really has been. And when you're in the media, you're never wrong. It's a beautiful thing.
There you go.
All right, guys. Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us all year long. Tom, thanks for coming on this week. Thank you all for watching this season. We will have a pre-bowl show coming up once we find out the destination. Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks for watching WTAJ's Nittany Nation Overtime. Tonight's show is brought to you by DeLeo Games, Cisney & O'Donnell, The Student Bookstore, Joe Comfort Toyota, Legends Power Sports, and Belding & Mall.
The NitWits have been brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By DeLeo Games, serving the community since 1945. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed & Salaney Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. By McAlear's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By RE/MAX Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage, no matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through, one-stop beer store. By Brent Kogan Electrical Services, lighting the way for you. By NovaCare, Altoona and State College, the power of physical therapy. By Fullington Tours, offering round-trip transportation to and from Beaver Stadium from locations in State College and Altoona. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs. Candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. By Harry's Construction. If you can dream it, we can create it. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.